Hi, welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name's Elliott and you're watching Rickety Ski Reviews. Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to wax and maybe tune your skis, just depends on what shape these are in. Now off the bat, this is gonna be a very rough DIY project. I spent years racing and there are different levels that you can wax and tune your skis. I'm just gonna do the basic job. How would you tune and wax a pair of skis? I'm actually working on a pair of skis that I'm going to give to a friend. Those are the Salomon Stance 90s. And I thought, well, I don't wanna give them to him in bad condition. And what a great way to do both. So let's jump into it. First thing you wanna do is kind of assess the skis and see how much of a tune job they need. Like, these are still pretty sharp. Whenever you wanna test your edges, you don't wanna go up and down. That's a really good way to get cut, but you can take just the palm of your hand and gently run it across the edge, and that'll kind of give you a sense of how much is it grabbing, how sharp are the edges. Now, out here in Idaho, we don't need our skis to be very sharp, but back in Vermont, it's a much bigger deal. These are pretty sharp. If I take a look at them, they look good. There's a couple of spots where the edges look like they have some burrs here. But other than that, I would say that these are in pretty good shape as far as the edges go. The other thing you want to assess is the bases. If you look really closely here, these are pretty good shape. There's a couple little spots here and there that's normal wear and tear. If you look along the edges though, it may be hard to see on the camera, there's a little bit of dryness showing up around the sides of the base. So these are definitely overdue to be brushed and waxed. The first tip for you guys doing this at home is you always want to tune before you wax, because when you tune, you get like metal shavings, there's metal debris. You want to be able to go in and brush it afterwards and clean it up. It doesn't make any sense to put a bunch of wax, get the bases nice and smooth, and then kind of contaminate that with a bunch of metal shavings. So that's why we're gonna tune first, and then we'll wax. Take your iron, you can kind of plug it in now and let it start to gradually warm up. You don't need the iron to be as hot as possible. You want it to kind of be in that middle section. We'll talk more about that later, but irons can take a little while, so it's a good thing to kind of just get it going early. I think for me personally, just because it's gonna take longer while I'm filming, I'll probably plug it in once I start brushing, but if it's you at home, you could probably start now. What I've got a whole video about all of the gear that I buy when I'm tuning and waxing skis, and just kind of like basic kits. Unfortunately, a lot of the kits that you buy don't have everything you need. So they're not really kits, but they do have like bundled together a lot of things you do need. But I find that this like Dakine kit, I forget what it's called, like the deluxe kit, works pretty well, but there's just a couple other things you need. Gummy Stone, base guide, file it comes with, but the brushes, I think you need more brushes, things like that. But all in all, you can get about 70% of what you need from these kits. And I'll put a link down below, but they look something like this. Okay, first thing first, it's really hard to work on skis when the bindings are like this, so the first thing I'm gonna do is bind them. Now, you can get like these specialized rubber bands, and I have like 8 of them somewhere in the house, but I live in a house with kids, so I think that they're all gone or were used on art projects or something. So I'm gonna show you how to do it without. Oh, so the kit does come with a single rubber band. I guess they couldn't splurge for 2. But this is like ideally this really thick rubber band, and you put it on the brakes. I'll do it on one of the skis. It's much easier if you do it on a flat surface. Okay, you're gonna press down on the brake. You've got one over here, and then you're gonna wrap it around and put it on the other brake so that these are held up. The other way to do it, if you don't have these rubber bands, is you're gonna do it with a ski scrap. It's kind of sketchy. It's not the best way to do it, but it works in a pinch. You used to be able to do it with old ski straps. They would have Velcro all around, but for whatever reason, they kind of stopped doing that. So you can take 2 ski straps, combine them together. Shout out to Volkl and Head. You take this part here, this rubber part, again, you push down on the brake, you put your ski strap here under this part of the brake, pull it through, kind of tuck that stuff away. Make sure you push this up so you can get it nice and tight. You don't want the bindings to kind of hang down over the bases, because when you're tuning your bases, you can kind of cut into it. So now I've gone and I've wrapped that around, and look, I've used 2 ski straps to basically work to hold the bindings up. Is this ideal? No. Does it look good? No. Is it even probably as safe as a rubber band? Actually, rubber bands break. It's probably just as safe. But when you're in a pinch before powder day, this will work.
All right, now that we've got the skis prepped, the first thing we want to do, clear my area a little bit,
is we want to clean the bases. So essentially we're gonna do that with a couple things. You can use a pad, you can use your brushes. I typically like to use my brass brush for just the initial cleaning, but we are gonna clear out the bases so that when we're running our file guide across it, we don't want it to be an uneven surface so that it's an uneven tune, so to speak. Take your brush. We always go tip to tail. Just kind of work my way up. It's not the best way to brush, right? But it doesn't really matter. We're just kind of doing an initial sweep to keep our bases clean. Again, these skis don't have a ton of miles, so it's not as crucial, but I just want to show you guys. Now we are ready to operate. Now, again, in theme, this is gonna be kind of janky. I don't have the vice grips that you normally would have. Typically, you'd have a 3-piece setup that I prefer, like 2 on each side that hold the bases or that can go on the side for doing the sides, and then 1 in the middle to kind of hold that binding. In my opinion, that middle piece is the most crucial one, but I'm balling on a budget here, so I'm just gonna use my old vice grip here. You kind of see it. And we're gonna jerry-rig this thing to work. Okay, next I'm gonna take my skis, open up this vice grip. As always, I'm operating tip to tail, so I wanna kind of have that in mind when I'm mounting this up here. And I'm just gonna try to hold this by the binding. You can see why having those actual vice grips that are designed for this are better, because it kind of guarantees a more like level fit. You have like kind of points of contact here. If you need to stabilize it, I usually put like 2x4s here. I think this will be fine for such an easy job, but typically I do recommend, you know, having this over the flat surface and having 2x4s underneath the tip and tail. So first thing I'm gonna look for when I'm going through Detune is I'm just gonna look for any points where there might be some rust. I'm pretty good at storing my stuff indoors, so it's not typically an issue, but I'll take this Gummy Stone and just kind of run it along any spots that look like they need a little bit of cleaning. Typically, if you're looking for rust spots, you can look for where you have the ski straps on. Typically, water will kind of build up there, and then that's where you typically see some rust. So there's a couple spots here, and a couple spots. You just kind of run it at a 45-degree angle and clean up any spots. There's a couple spots here that are a little burred up, so it won't hurt to help kind of clean those up a little bit before I tune it. So next, I'm going to tune the bases. I'm going to take my base file guide, put my file inside of it, and work down. One tip with these files is you always want this little arrow pointing in the direction down that you're going. So again, tip to tail. This is the part where I really could use that wood block now. And tip to tail on the other side. You want this metal part on your base, that's kind of the smooth running part. You can see why we want it clean too, we want it to run clean. And then this part, this corner runs along the edge. This setup is definitely sketchier than I like, but I just want to do it in a way that you guys can see clearly. As you're going across, you'll feel kind of resistance in those areas that are burred up or really need that tune. You could do this multiple times. Again, like I said, these skis are pretty sharp and pretty new, so it's not super necessary, but you know, do it to taste. Like if your skis are really banged up, they may need a couple more passes. Now, ideally, if I was doing like a really smooth, like trying to do my best tune job, what I would probably do is I would then run like a diamond over it just to kind of round off and smooth off some of those more like burred off parts. What you're really doing is kind of peeling back a layer of metal, and then that makes sure that it's even like a little bit more fine. Again, just the way I understand it. But this is just a basics video, so I'm not gonna include the diamond here. Oh, although I do have one. Shoot, maybe I'll just do it. With a diamond, you typically want to have some water on hand. So this is the diamond. It's just the same as the file, right? You put it in the same spot, just run it through. Typically you wanna have water on hand, and then you kind of dunk the diamond as you go. You don't want it to like overheat or get kind of build up with some of the shavings. If you're doing it very haphazardly, you can just spit on it. One of my kids' shows that they like to watch, they have a saying, if every pork chop was perfect, we wouldn't have hot dogs. Remember, these are tools, not jewels. Ooh, that is a good feeling though. Do it again. They sell like special stuff for this, but you don't, just some water will work fine. When I worked in the ski shop, we used to just keep like a little empty Windex bottle and fill it with water, and you just kind of spray it as you go. The trick is you just want to kind of keep it lubricated, right? So that the diamond doesn't overheat or just start to damage the edges. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So once we've given it the old Octo and Diamond Stone treatment, we're going to move on to the side edges. The reason you do the bases first is you want to have a smooth platform to operate off of, because with your file guide, you're gonna be working off of the bases and then getting that angle. 2 degrees is what I have. It'll work fine. I would suggest if you really are on like a carving ski and want to get good angles. For slalom, I prefer 3 degrees and actually GS2 eventually. But 2 degrees will work fine. I don't think the average person would even notice the difference. These will work great. And I use 2 degrees now. It doesn't really affect me too much, but if I was really trying to dial this in, you could go with 3 degrees. It's all to taste. 2 degrees, like I said though, is nice because it helps the edges last a little bit longer. You're not pulling off as much metal each pass is my understanding. But again, I learned this stuff when I was a teenager, so there was no internet back then. You just hear folk tales on how stuff worked. God. But as I was saying, now our ski is prepped and ready. Now that I've got my bases ready, I'm just gonna go, again, tip to tail as always. Tip to tail. With a diamond stone, you can go back and forth, but because these little files inside of these guides are directional, again, this is part of the kit, you wanna just move forward and then lift up or take the pressure off. You don't wanna go back and forth. Then what I like to do, maybe this is just superstition from racing, I like to do one pass all the way from tip to tail. Now we're gonna do the same thing, but on the other side. Now, if you wanted, you could turn the whole ski around. Again, I'm not that picky. So again, just going tip to tail. And now that's done. Your skis are tuned. You could do a diamond on the side edges. I don't feel like that's necessary here. The only thing left to do, and I've heard that you don't necessarily always have to do this, but I do it still out of habit, is you want to detune your tips and tails. So you basically are just looking for the contact point. What happens is if your tips and tails are tuned, what can happen is you can kind of hook in or the edges can bite in before you really want them to. So I just start, you want to find whatever is kind of the beginning of the splay of the ski, so whatever the last point of contact with the snow would be, and then work from there. So I just take my gummy stone again, detune the tip and the tail. Some people like to keep one of these in their car just in case they forget. It's up to you. And then I'll just go to the tails now too. The tails are a little bit different. There's way less contact points, so it's really just kind of like the last inch of the ski. All right, and now that I've done that, what I like to do is I like to take my softer hairbrush and just give it a quick pass to clean up any debris or metal shavings that may have come through. Okay, now this pair is ready to wax. I'm just gonna do exactly the same thing to the other pair. Oh, another tip I have, especially if you're new, it doesn't hurt to wear a pair of these like leather gloves, especially if they're all around. If you're adverse to getting your hand sliced open, these are pretty effective. All right, now I've gone ahead and plugged in my iron. One thing I like to do when I have my iron out is plugging it into the extension cord so you have more room to operate. And then you just wanna find a clean and clear surface to let it kind of heat up on. As far as waxing goes, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. There's 2 methods. There's kind of the crayon method where you just get the wax a little bit hot and then you kind of wipe it across like a crayon. This is the more conservative way. It uses less wax. But the downsides are that sometimes stuff can get missing. I think it's the most efficient way to do it and it's the least messy. What I tend to do myself is actually kind of a hybrid between both. I will do this and then as I'm kind of getting the wax warm and rubbing it across the ski, I will let anything that kind of builds up and drips into some of the bigger gaps. It's got these kind of little drip corners, so you can use those to kind of guide where the wax lands. And see here I've got like a kind of a, not a core shot, but kind of on the line. And I'll just drip into that spot there. Okay. Once you've got a serviceable amount of wax, and that should be more than enough wax, just to kind of show you. Now, I'm gonna put my wax away. I won't need any more wax. I'm going to work again, tip to tail, and just kind of do one pass, kind of going side to side a little bit to make sure that that wax is spread out evenly. I'm always kind of working tip to tail, but in these passes, I just kind of go side to side so that there's no kind of dry spots on the ski. Now, in my opinion, this is the most important part. What I'm gonna do now is just go very slowly and make a nice even pass through. What you wanna do is you wanna have about 3 to 4 inches tail from when it's drying to when it's going. So you'll see kind of a little wet tail following behind you, and just work that way. I don't tend to do my iron more than 3 or 4 on the heat, but some of that will depend on what you like. I'm gonna do one more pass through. This doesn't look super smooth. What I'm gonna do now is you wanna let this wax cool and go do the next ski. Okay, now that I'm done with the iron, I am going to set it somewhere safely and just let it cool down. You don't want it to fall over and start a fire. Just set it somewhere on its own and let it cool down. Now there are a bunch of different variations on how you can do this. Some people like to put layers of wax in, especially racers. Some people like have a whole hot box set up where they basically put it in a warm box and kind of really let the wax get into the bases. For this video, I'm gonna just do the basics. I like to let it sit for a few minutes, and honestly, while you're working on one ski, there's plenty of cool down time for the other ski. So you could do it however you want. Some people have like their own kind of ideas on what works. I do think that letting the wax sit overnight can be helpful if the skis are really dried out. But again, these skis are pretty new, they're not too dried out, so it's not very necessary. And what you gain from it, it's like, okay, we're not running time trials here for racing. It doesn't really matter. You just want your bases to be, you know, not dried out and healthy. Let this one dry, and this one has had time to cool. Now you can tell when you kind of touch the base, it's cool, right? The wax isn't just coming off with my fingers. Okay, next what we're gonna do is we're gonna scrape them. Okay, I've got my scraper that came with it. One thing that's worth buying if you're gonna wax a lot of skis, buy this. It is a scraper sharpener. It sounds so silly, but having a sharp scraper that works well will make your life a lot easier. You wanna do a good job with scraping, because if you kind of don't do a good job and there's a lot of wax left over, you're gonna have to do a lot more brushing. So again, this is kind of sketchy, right? You would normally just have something holding the ski here, so you could use 2 hands. I always go at an angle pointing down the ski. And again, we're always working tip to tail. But I like going like this. Some people do this, I don't know. It seems like a good way to get cut. Says the guy who doesn't use the right vice grips. So I'm always kind of working forward. Again, scraping is not something where you want to work backwards. I was very light on my waxing, so there's not a ton, but if you were doing the drip waxing, you would have more kind of building up. I like to hold it about 30 to 45 degree angle, somewhere in there. The other thing to watch out for is if you do the drip waxing, you don't want to do it somewhere like inside on a good carpet, because that wax will stay. I'm out in the shed with an old carpet working on this, so it doesn't matter to me, but it may upset your significant other, so you can always put down like cardboard or newspaper or something. Some people I've seen even use tarps. You can kind of see 2 spots where there's more wax buildup. Right there we go. And now for some of these too, you can see where the wax is, like, if it's not a core shot, but it's kind of a deep groove, where the wax will kind of fill it in a little bit. Next, what we're gonna do now that we've gotten our scraping done, we're gonna use our brass hairbrush. This is brass with a little bit of nylon on the outside. You wanna work kind of, work up in fineness, if that makes any sense. So you've got your more coarse brush to start, and then you use your finer bristle brush as you kind of go along. So this is a little bit different. One thing a lot of people do is they just kind of go forward and brush. What I like to do when I brush is go forward and then back just like a centimeter back, because if you think of your skis as pores, or the way it was explained to me anyways, is like they're these little kind of pores. If you work one way, you're gonna kind of scrape out the wax, but then on the back side, there's gonna be kind of a blind spot. So just doing that little pass back ensures that you're kind of fully getting the dried wax or the excess stuff out. This ski's kind of wide, so I'm gonna do the wide part of the brush on this part, and then as I get towards the middle, I like the feeling of holding it this way. That's the thing with these brushes, the ones with the handles, in my opinion, are a lot nicer. But again, this is just what came with the kit. Take your time, go through, do it right. And give it a wipe down. See how my ski's moving on me? I need to redo the vise. Okay, now I'm gonna use my finer horsehair brush. I like using these ones because there's a little bit more movement. So having the strap is nice. Again, this didn't come with a kit, I bought this. Okay, do one more pass through. And you can pick how much time you want to spend on this. If you only have, 20 minutes to get it done, just do one pass through and skip it. If you want to be a little more meticulous, you can kind of pick how you do it. And then lastly, they include this little bristle pad. You can use this also for cleaning the edges, but I like to kind of keep it smooth and just do one nice last pass through with it. Okay, and this ski is done. Now it's not perfect, but I will say the bases look much healthier. We don't have those kind of dry spots along the edges anymore. You can get different wax for different snow conditions, but it's just kind of summer and I'm getting these skis prepped to give to someone else and I want them to be in good shape. All right, I'll do a time lapse for the last one. Alright, so that's how you wax and tune your skis, at least at a very basic level. A couple of little pointers I forgot to mention. One, I always like to make sure I have proper airflow, so you may see it in some of the camera angles, but I've got my door open here. Usually I'll even do a fan, I just didn't want it to be loud here. I know waxes have come a long way, but back in the day of like the high fluoro stuff, they found that that stuff is really bad for you. So back then you would wear like neoprene, or what is it, vinyl gloves? I forget what they're called, but like, like doctor's gloves or whatever, or you'd wear the leather gloves. I know people who would wear gas masks, like the N95 kind of carpentry masks, So I would say at the very bare minimum, just make sure you have proper airflow. You don't want to breathe this kind of wax fumes in. Again, modern wax is supposed to be fine, but that's what we thought about the old wax, so I don't know, just something I do personally. The other thing I wanted to mention is that you also are gonna see some residue, especially on the tails with leftover wax. That's normal. Again, it's not a contact point, so it doesn't really matter. If it bothers you aesthetically, you can go, but you'll ski it off. And again, I probably overdo it with the brushing because you're gonna ski a lot of that stuff off anyway, but I like to have it done well. And maybe that's just carryover from the race days. You can also do a variation for the summertime where you just put all the wax on, do the run across with the iron and then leave it where you don't scrape or brush. And that's fine to do before you store them for the summer. And actually in the East Coast, you can keep your edges from rusting because that wax will kind of seal off or keep moisture out. But you do have to remember when you go into the fall or winter to go and scrape or brush them off. I guess you could ski it off, but that gets pretty gnarly. At the bare minimum, I would probably scrape it off. Yeah, that's the basics. You could do things a little bit more simply. You could do things a little bit more complex. You could take more passes, less passes. It's really up to you and how you like your skis. And I do think it's good to wax and tune your skis because you kind of get a feel for what you like and just, I don't know, you kind of build a good connection with your equipment. So the options too, if you just don't want to spend this much time on it, you can go to a shop and they'll do a good job with it. But this is just my basic how-to on how to tune and wax your skis. I think if you've got really nice skis, you care about carving, or especially certain times of the year where the snow is sticky, this stuff is really helpful. And if nothing else, it'll help you get a few more years out of your gear if you properly take care of it. Or at least more years of the same performance. I guess you can ski on anything for long enough. So anyway, that's the end of the video. I will try to include affiliate links to all the gear that I have. Like I said, 70% of it was that Dakine kit, but then there were a couple things that they really were missing out on, like the base tuner or the brush it here for the softer brush But you know, you can still get by with the other stuff, but there are a couple things I do feel like the kit is really missing. As always, you can like and subscribe. We have channel memberships down below. You know, I'm sure I did a couple things wrong. Feel free to leave a comment on things you like to do or things you found from tuning your own skis that you tend to like. I hope you found this helpful. I'm not the best at DIY content, but I'm trying my best. And as always, more than anything, just thanks for being here. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful to you. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. See ya.